back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, April 1st, first day of April Fool's Day. Got a lot to talk about on the show for today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show, talk about some more Brandon Aiyuk stuff, as well as talking about Arik Armstead as well, with him leaving the 49ers, the 49ers releasing him, and then he ended up joining the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we'll talk about the reasoning behind that. So we'll get into that, as well as, like I said, the Aiyuk stuff. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about another move that the Jets made, acquiring edge rusher Haason Reddick from the Philadelphia Eagles. So we'll talk about that as they continue to load up their roster for 2024. They're going all in with Aaron Rodgers, so we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about some players that could possibly be dealt before the NFL draft. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about some of the risky contracts from this offseason, and as well as looking at some of the remaining free agents. So that's the rundown for the show today. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Crazy sports weekend with March Madness. Baseball coming back as well. Again, we're getting closer and closer to the NBA and NHL playoffs, so it was a big sports weekend. And quick thing as a Yankee fan, this weekend was great. It was unbelievable what I saw this weekend. The Yankees sweeping the Houston Astros, so that was awesome. So they start off the season 4-0, and now they play the Diamondbacks, the defending NL champs, tonight. 3-game set in Arizona, so this is great. A great start for them. So let's, at least for me, hoping they continue that momentum into this series. But anyways, let's get into the football stuff. So a couple of 49ers, one of them now a former San Francisco 49ers player. So obviously we've talked about Brandon Aiyuk. We'll get into him first. That's the bigger story with this segment here. But yeah, Brandon Aiyuk has been the topic of conversation on my show for a while now. Ever since the Super Bowl, I've done quite a few segments on Brandon Aiyuk. And at least the most recent news, the two seem to be far apart. Two sides between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk, they seem to be far apart on a new contract. The 49ers have the option to exercise Aiyuk's fifth-year option on his contract. Aiyuk hinted at a potential holdout if an extension isn't agreed upon, and he's coming off of a season where he had over 1,300 yards and seven touchdowns. He's been their leading receiver the past couple of seasons. He expressed the desire for a new contract that reflects his value to the team. So if the 49ers do indeed exercise Aiyuk's fifth-year option, he would earn $14.1 million in 2024 and then would become an unrestricted free agent in 2025. So I've gone over this several times. But at the moment, it seems that the two sides, the 49ers and Aiyuk, are far apart. And the way it looks right now, Brandon Aiyuk could end up being traded. Now, I don't know where he's going to end up being traded, but at this very moment, it seems like that's what we are heading towards. And that would really hurt the 49ers. Now, they are a well-run organization, and I feel like they'll be okay. But when you look at what I talked about last week, Brock Purdy, the future of Brock Purdy, and the fact that he's eventually going to want a new contract, this is a big part of the 49ers offense that they could end up losing in Aiyuk. And you take him out, that's going to affect Purdy. And I talked about this. And how people on social media talk about the Avengers squad that the 49ers have. Well, when you take one of them out, the offense is different. Now, again, I still think Brock Purdy is a solid quarterback, but, you take away one of his main weapons, the offense is going to be different, and he's not going to be the same quarterback. So, if the 49ers don't have Brandon Aiyuk in 2024, and they may still have him, but what could end up happening is, like I just said, he could end up holding out. And again, I go back to that 3-game stretch the 49ers had when they lost Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. They were a different team. So now if you lose Brandon Aiyuk, that is going to hurt this offense. Now again, you still have guys that could pick up the slack, of course. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and of course Christian McCaffrey. And we saw the Super Bowl that Juwan Jennings had. But, they need Brandon Aiyuk. Look at the catch that Brandon Aiyuk made in the NFC Championship game that changed the complexion of the game. It looked like it was going to be an interception, and then the ball was floating around, and Aiyuk caught it off the rebound when the Lions couldn't intercept the ball, and that was a big play in the game that set up a touchdown, and all the momentum flipped in the game, went to the 49ers, and they ultimately won that game. So, I mean, that was more of a credit to Aiyuk because the pass that Purdy thrown should have been intercepted, but that ended up not happening. And the 49ers won that game. So now there's a possibility that Brandon Aiyuk might not be with the 49ers. And the 49ers got a lot of decisions that they have to make. Guys are, they're not going to be able to keep everybody. How many times have I said that with teams? But right now, they're at a standstill. And who knows if that'll get resolved or not. Right now, the way things are, it looks like he could be traded. And I don't know where he will get traded to. I mean, I could tell you he's not getting traded to any team in the NFC West. I know that. But who knows? He could be traded to another team in the NFC. I mean, I think the more likely scenario is maybe he gets traded to a team in the AFC so the 49ers don't have to see him unless it's in the Super Bowl. But I don't know. But at least for right now, it looks like he could end up being traded. Especially like now when you see he's talking about holding out. Yeah, not a good sign. Not a good sign. And like I've said, we've seen receivers get traded during the NFL draft. A.J. Brown, Marquise Brown. Brandon Aiyuk could be the latest receiver to get traded during the draft. And like I said, the 49ers are a well-run organization. So if they do happen to trade Aiyuk, I'm sure that they will find somebody. Now again, might not have an immediate impact, but I think they would be able to figure it out. But the thing I worry about in the short term is how that impacts Brock Purdy. Because if Brock Purdy goes out there now without Brandon Aiyuk and doesn't play well, and I talked about how, the 49ers could be paying him a new contract, well, now maybe the 49ers might say, yeah, maybe we don't have the guy. Maybe we got to go and find a replacement. Because that just seems what's been going on with the 49ers lately is they have the roster. It's just they've had trouble finding that guy to be their franchise quarterback. That's why they went out and traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. That's why they traded up to get Trey Lance. Brock Purdy wasn't supposed to be the answer. It just so happened that he got his opportunity from injuries to the other guys. Garoppolo, Trey Lance getting hurt. Brock Purdy stepped in and got an opportunity. And he took full advantage of it. Brought the 49ers to an NFC Championship game. He unfortunately got hurt. But the following season, he was the guy. And they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Came up a little bit short, but they did that with him as the quarterback. But again, still has gotten a lot of criticism. So, they end up losing Brandon Aiyuk. That's that would be a huge loss for them. So that's really the update right now. Is there's really no update other than they're far apart. So, I think right now, the way it is at the moment, he could be traded. But who knows? Who knows? Just it's all speculation, like I say. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is Arik Armstead. So I was a little surprised when the 49ers released him because Arik Armstead's a good player. You know, he's been part of that defensive line for quite some time now. And they ended up releasing him. He joined the Jaguars. He signed a 3-year deal with them, $43.5 million. So he revealed on his podcast, A Third and Long, I didn't even know he had a podcast, but he revealed on his podcast that he felt disrespected by the 49ers' offer of a $6 million deal for 1 year with incentives. He believed that the offer didn't reflect his value as a player or his commitment to the game, team, organization, and community. Armstead had 27 tackles in 2023, 5 sacks, and a defensive grade of 81.9 according to Pro Football Focus, indicating he deserves more than the offered $6 million. Armstead acknowledged the business side of football, but expressed emotional hurt at the process that led to his departure from the 49ers. 49ers released him after he declined to take the pay cut. He ended up going to Jacksonville. And, Jacksonville's getting a good player. You know, pairing him up with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. So, that was good for the Jaguars. They got a good player in Armstead. Armstead also admitted he anticipated the possibility of leaving the 49ers due to the team's talent abundance and salary cap constraints. Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. That is the main thing. And that could be, again, which ties in with the Aiyuk stuff, that could be what ends up, happening with Aiyuk is they end up moving off of him because they can't pay him. They don't have the room. So, I mean, you got guys on defense, with Bosa and, the linebackers, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. And, well, Dre Greenlaw is obviously hurt going into next year after the injury he suffered in the Super Bowl. But, and then you got on the offensive side of the ball, I just talked about with Purdy. Purdy's going to be a huge cap hit if you end up paying him. And you got Deebo Samuel, you got George Kittle, McCaffrey. I mean, there's so many guys that are going to need to be paid. And, that's why they had to make moves like letting go of Arik Armstead. And that's why Brandon Aiyuk could be traded. It's because they just don't have the room. So, but we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, I mean, what Armstead said is true. At the end of the day, and it goes for all the other sports, it's a business. And you may be loved in the organization, but ultimately, they're going to have to make tough decisions, and it's a business first. So they asked Armstead to take a pay cut, and it was too much of a pay cut, $6 million, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they ended up letting him go. Look what the Packers did with Aaron Jones. For the moment, the Packers had Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs. They're 2 running backs going into 2024, which would have been a great duo. But they asked Aaron Jones to take a pay cut, and he said no, and they let him go, and he went to Minnesota. So it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality for these players. So, but let me know what you guys think about both of these topics. Do you guys think that Brandon Aiyuk will indeed be traded? Will the 49ers give him the contract that he desires, or are these two sides in for a breakup? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we are going to discuss the Jets, once again, acquiring Haason Reddick from the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'll talk about that as the Jets continue to load up for 2024. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the New York Jets once again, a team that I've talked about a handful of times over the last couple of weeks. But they made another move, and they acquired edge rusher Haason Reddick from the Philadelphia Eagles. And obviously, they lost Bryce Huff to the Philadelphia Eagles, so they took away Haason Reddick, who was looking to be traded, and the Jets swooped in and got him. So the Jets are sending a conditional 2026 third-round pick for Reddick, which would change based on his performance. The Jets will take on $14.5 million of Reddick's 2024 compensation, while the Eagles will account for his roster bonus. Again, like I just talked about, trade comes after Bryce Huff left the Jets to sign with the Eagles, so now they end up getting him. Reddick had a solid 2023 season, 11 sacks, 38 tackles, earning his second consecutive Pro Bowl appearance. Also had double-digit sacks in 2022. The Eagles were hesitant to pay his increased salary for 2024. So, and the Jets, they're looking, for a replacement for Bryce Huff, so they get him. And listen, the Jets, their defensive line is going to be pretty good. Going to be pretty good in 2024. And it already was good, but you add him with Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers, along with 2023 first-round pick Will McDonald. Also, you got Quinnen Williams as well, someone who I really haven't talked about, Quinnen Williams. So you got to like that. You got to like that for the Jets. And they, like I said, going into break, they are going all in for 2024. They go out and they get Mike Williams. They traded for Morgan Moses, signed a couple of more offensive linemen, John Simpson, and, of course, Tyron Smith from the Cowboys. You go out and you get a replacement for Bryce Huff. I mean, the Jets should be better in 2024. And like I said and have been saying, I'm going to be in the minority, and I will go down with the ship and say that this team will be a playoff team. The talent is there. And you saw what this defense could do against some of these elite quarterbacks, against Patrick Mahomes, against Josh Allen. They beat Josh Allen. Patrick Mahomes, they should have beaten. A couple of flags that were thrown that shouldn't have been thrown, because Mahomes should have had 3 interceptions. But the third one got called back because of a pick. because of a flag. So, yeah, and look at what they did to Jalen Hurts, too. So, if you can get an Aaron Rodgers that, in 2022 it wasn't great, but you would take his touchdown to interception ratio in 2022 and put that on the Jets, and the Jets would be a playoff team. And that's really what it all is going to come down to, is the health of their quarterback. Because if he's not healthy, the Jets aren't going anywhere. They're not. Especially because, again, the conference that they play in. This conference is loaded from top to bottom. Well, for the most part. There's some teams that aren't going to be very good. Like the Broncos right now, Jared Stidham right now is their starting quarterback. But, that's just one team off the top of my head. A lot of these teams are going to be competitive, going to be fighting for wild card spots. You look at the AFC North, which is the best division in football. Those teams are going to be right in the thick of it for wild cards. The Jets, and I did say this, I think maybe their best path to the postseason is winning their division. And I think with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, they can definitely do that. Because the Bills and the Dolphins, they had to make some changes on their rosters, particularly on defense. So, I think that the Jets have a chance. They have an inside track to maybe steal this division. But again, it all goes back to health. Because you bring in Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith is a Hall of Fame left tackle. The problem with him is staying on the field. Now, he played in 13 games in 2023, which is good for him. Because there's been years where he's played in 2 games, 4 games. It just he's been hurt a lot. But if he could stay healthy, that is a huge upgrade for the Jets on this offensive line. Joe Douglas really made it a priority to address this offensive line this offseason after he made some comments where he was like, "Oh, the offensive line is fine," which it's like, no, it's not. You got to go out and do something. You got to change it. Otherwise, your quarterback's going to get hurt again. And they did that. So you can't blame Joe Douglas for not trying. Now, what are they going to do in the draft? Because they could do a lot of different things with the pick that they have. Maybe they try to add to this receiving core and get one of these top receivers. If Rome Odunze can fall to them, Brian Thomas Jr., the other LSU receiver, if they want to go that route. Because odds are Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be off the board. You could, maybe you get Malik Neighbors. The Giants, we got to see what they're going to end up doing. Because they picked before the Jets. Are they going to take a quarterback? They're going to take a receiver? Because the Giants need a receiver more than the Jets do. The Jets at least have Garrett Wilson, hopefully a healthy Mike Williams. They at least have receivers. The Giants really do not have receivers. The Giants, receiver is more of a necessity for the Giants. But quarterback is a necessity. So, and we'll see what the Cardinals end up doing. They keep saying they're committed to Kyler Murray. I know I talked about last week the Mike Tannenbaum, trade proposal with, them trading with the Vikings getting Kyler and them taking J.J. McCarthy. It's not happening. The Cardinals, they might end up taking a receiver, or they end up trading down. But the Cardinals need a receiver because obviously, DeAndre Hopkins isn't there anymore. They traded Rondell Moore. Right now you have Michael Wilson. Greg, I think they still have Greg Dortch, right? Who else do they have? I'm drawing a blank on. Marquise Brown isn't there anymore. You got Trey McBride, their tight end, who's played very well in 2023, had a breakout season. But they need another receiver. So we'll see if they end up drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. for Kyler. But yeah, with the Jets, they could do a lot of different things. I know from what I see on social media, people are like, you got to draft offensive linemen still. Because, again, one of these guys could get hurt. Tyron Smith could get hurt. And then your depth has to step in. And if the depth's not good, well, then Aaron Rodgers is in trouble. So I think they will. I think they will address the offensive lineman position. You know, they'll probably maybe draft another, tackle or guard or something in the draft. I don't think they're going to go all other positions. I think you will see them draft an offensive lineman. Now, is it going to be with their first pick? I don't know. But like I said, they could do a lot of different things. They could even trade down. But I don't know. I mean, if they see one of these receivers sitting there at their pick, I mean, and then also another guy I didn't talk about, Brock Bowers. He could be another guy that they could end up taking. So I feel like I would lean more towards them drafting another playmaker as opposed to drafting another offensive lineman, at least with their first pick. I think then they'd probably draft some with their later picks. I think with their first pick, they're going to draft best player available. So, because you want to surround Aaron Rodgers with as much talent as possible. But I mean, I like what the Jets have done this offseason. But they just got to go out there and perform. And stay healthy. And like I said, I'm going to be the one that's optimistic and say that this team is going to get their do-over. Because 2023, that was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers was going to lead them to the promised land. Now, again, I don't know if he's going to lead them to the promised land in 2024, but I think he will at least, if he's healthy, get them to the playoffs. Because, I mean, this roster is too good that they got to make it to the postseason. And if they don't, that's it for Robert Saleh. That's it for Joe Douglas. That's it for Nathaniel Hackett. And it might be it for Rodgers too. Because what are you gonna keep Rodgers and then, bring in a whole new coaching staff? I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. But again, that's just me. I mean, I've been saying all along, I really hope that he has a bounce back season. He has a productive season because I don't want to see him go out the way he did. And again, you might have your complaints about Aaron Rodgers, about other things, because he's been in the news a lot for things that have nothing to do with football. One of them includes him being a possible candidate for vice president. It's just that's all outside of football. But listen, I've loved watching Aaron Rodgers play growing up. I mean, he's been one of my favorite players for a long time. And again, this is just strictly football. Nothing else. He has been spectacular. And it's just unfortunate that he only has one Super Bowl. He's only made it to one Super Bowl. He's had opportunities. He's made it to the NFC Championship game plenty of times. But was never able to get back to the Super Bowl. And I don't think he ever will. Again, I expect the Jets to have a good season. But, again, they're in a really tough conference. And when Aaron Rodgers gets to the playoffs, lately, it's kind of been on him. Unfortunately. The 49ers game, the most recent playoff game that he has played in, that was on him. I mean, they only put up 10 points at home against Jimmy Garafolo and the 49ers, who did not score an offensive touchdown. That loss was on him. And then you had Tom Brady the year before that. Finally got to see Brady versus Rodgers in the playoffs. And despite Brady throwing 3 picks, Packers lost that game. After years of Rodgers saying how he wants one of those games at home. Well, they got it, but they couldn't get it done. Now, again, I thought he played well in that game. I know people said he didn't play good. He didn't play well, but he definitely could have played better. But people said he played awful. No, he didn't. He was good. It's just he wasn't good enough. And the Packers were playing catch-up that whole game. But, again, that's in the past. And we got to focus on now. This Jets team on paper is solid. The defense, we saw what they did last year. But it's just they had an offense that just could not get the job done. But you go into next year, improved offensive line, healthy Aaron Rodgers. You got Breece Hall coming off of a solid second season. And really came on strong in the second half. So you got a solid running game with him. You got Garrett Wilson. We'll see what they do in the draft. I mean, again, expect the Jets to be an improved team. They should be. And if they're not, well, then I'll throw my hands up and say, I got nothing. So you can clown me and again, I'm not a Jet fan. And I just told you I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. So, yeah, maybe there's some bias. But I have a hard time. Again, I could see it going both ways. They could end up having this great year, but also I could just see it once again just falling apart. And we see something similar to what we saw last year. But I'm not going to sway that way. I'm going to say that they are going to have a good 2024 season and make the playoffs. So, but let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know what you guys think about the original topic, which is of this segment, which was them acquiring Haason Reddick. But yeah. So before we go into break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about possible trade candidates before the NFL draft. And one of those players happens to be the other quarterback that is still on the Jets roster. So we'll get into all that when we come back from our second break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And welcome back to segment number 3 of the GSMC Football Podcast. And with that, we will talk about some possible trade candidates. And it is April Fool's Day. So, my college, Quinnipiac, so their Barstool page, they posted a thing that Quinnipiac could be adding a football team, will be adding a football team to their athletics program. And then right after I sent it in my group chat, I realized what today was and said, that is not going to happen. Now, again, they did win the NCAA tournament in hockey last season. So at least, they have that. They did lose yesterday, unfortunately, to Boston College, so they were eliminated from that. So they will not be in the Frozen Four this year. So that was a tough loss. But for the moment I was excited. I was like, wow, they're going to get a football team. This is great. Yeah, but that's not happening. That is not happening. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in to the conversation here. But yeah, so with this segment here, we're going to talk about some possible trade candidates. So this is from an article that I saw on, I believe it was CBS. So let's get into, so it was CBS. So a few players here. So one of them, who's on the Jets still, is Zach Wilson. Now, it doesn't seem like he's getting any offers. And if the Jets do release him, well, their cap hit is going to be significant. So he might end up being on the roster next year. And it's just the fact that is a possibility. And on top of that, what happened in 2023 could happen again. I mean, you could see Zach Wilson playing for the Jets. He could be on the field. And it would be, I mean, it would just be a disaster. And Jet fans would lose their minds. But because on top of that, you got Tyrod Taylor, who they brought in, and Tyrod is a solid backup quarterback, but Tyrod also has an injury problem too. I mean, Tommy DeVito had to play for the Giants because Tyrod got hurt. So it's possible we could see Zach Wilson taking snaps for the Jets in 2024, which I mean, if you're a Jet fan, that's got to drive you crazy. But it's still possible. Maybe somebody, maybe the Jets are just that desperate and they just get rid of him. I mean, look at what the Bears got for Justin Fields. I don't know, so we'll see. But that's one trade candidate. But right now, it doesn't seem like that's happening. Now, another one I thought was interesting was Chris Godwin. Now, they did bring back Mike Evans. And, Chris Godwin, well, actually, let's look at his stats with Baker in 2023. So Godwin had over 1,000 yards, 83 receptions, 1,024 yards, only 2 touchdowns. I mean, still had a good season. But, so he signed so this was a 4-year contract with the Bucs. So in 2024, Godwin will earn a base salary of $20 million while carrying a over $27 million cap hit and a dead cap value of $26 million. So that's his current contract at the moment. When did he sign that contract, though? Because it doesn't say when. It just says he signed a 4-year contract. So I guess this was no. I can't find it. But yeah, so his most recent contract was a 4-year deal. So, but yeah, that's his cap hit. But anyways, that's at least one player that they listed as a possible trade candidate. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, the Bucs, outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I know they had Trey Palmer, who made some plays for them, their rookie wide receiver. But I feel like the Bucs don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. Now, again, they're probably going to draft one, I would imagine, when we get to the draft later this month. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're going to keep Godwin around. I'd be surprised if he ended up getting traded. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, maybe he ends up being a trade candidate, after 2024. Depending upon, the kind of season he has. But I don't see him being traded. Now, the other players they have listed as well, a couple of defensive players. Now, the potential suitors that they had, the Cardinals, who need a wide receiver, the Patriots, and the Ravens as well. But I don't see Godwin being traded. They got a couple of defensive players, like I said, though. So Matthew Judon, he's another player with the Patriots. Potential suitors for him, the Buccaneers, the Rams, and the Ravens. Was injured last season. I don't think he really didn't play that much. And he's a solid player. Did play with the Ravens at one point. Yeah, so he only had 13 combined tackles and 4 sacks. Actually, how many games did he play in? So he played in... so like I said, he had 4 sacks. Yeah, he only played in 4 games. But last 2 seasons, the prior 2 seasons, he played in 17 games. And he had 12.5 sacks in 2021, 15.5 sacks in 2022. So, and again, he's getting older. Now he's 31. Really hasn't missed a lot of time. Played in 14 games in 2016. 2017 through 2019 played in all 16 games. Played in 14 in 2020. But yeah, played in every game in 2021 and 2022 with the additional regular season game. But only played in 4 in 2023. So I don't know. Maybe the Patriots potentially move off of him. He can go to a team that's a contender, possibly. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then also another player that could be moved is possibly Budda Baker, the safety for the Arizona Cardinals. 87 combined tackles in 2023, 29 assists. Wanted to look at the amount of games he played in, because I think he was also hurt this year too. Oh, so he played in 12 games. But yeah, he hasn't really missed a lot of games either. Played in 14 in 2018, played in 15 in 2020, 15 in 2022. 2023 he played in 12, which was the least amount of games he's played in a season. But did not have an interception. Actually didn't have an interception his first 3 seasons in the NFL. Had 2 in 2020, 3 in 2021, and 2 in 2022. But didn't have any in 2023. Last 2 seasons he hasn't recorded a sack. Again, but he's playing safety. But you get the idea, though. I mean, he's still 28. Hasn't even hit 30 yet. I mean, we'll see. If the Cardinals move off of him, that's a possibility. And then what did I say? The potential suitors for him. So you got the Bills, which I think, with the moves that they've made, letting go of some of their guys, Poyer and Micah Hyde as well. I don't think they brought back Micah Hyde, but yeah, I mean, they kind of need a safety there. You also got the Colts as well. And the 49ers too. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, despite the slight raise last offseason, Baker's pricey deal and the presence of younger talent in Arizona's defense can make him available. So, well, again, I don't know if the Cardinals are going to trade him within the division, but we'll see. So that's some of the possible trade candidates before the draft. I mean, again, I don't really see Zach Wilson getting traded. I don't at this current moment. I don't see Chris Godwin. I really don't see any of these guys getting traded. At least before the draft. I mean, maybe you see Matthew Judon get traded. Possibly. I mean, I think the defensive guys, I think there's more of a chance to see those guys get traded as opposed to, Zach Wilson and Chris Godwin. I mean, the Bucs, they trying to run it back with the same team. I think trading Godwin, that would hurt them. Again, I see the Bucs maybe addressing the receiver position in the draft. But I don't see them moving off of Godwin. And again, I don't know what's out there for Zach Wilson. Maybe you get if they get a 7th round pick for him, maybe just to get rid of him. I don't know. But I mean, if I'm the Jets, I can't go into next year with him being on the team. I can't do it. Can't do it. But they again, that's just me. But we'll see what happens. But let me know what you guys think. Is there a possibility that any of these guys are going to get traded? And if so, who do you think, where do you think one of these players will end up if that does indeed end up happening? But I think at least with the offensive guys, with Zach Wilson, with Chris Godwin, I don't see them getting traded. I mean, Zach Wilson, if you're the Jets, you hope you can get rid of him somehow without having to release him. Because you cannot go into next year with him on the team. You can't. After everything that happened in 2023, he cannot be on this team. But right now he still is. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about the trade candidates we just discussed. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we'll talk about some of the risky contracts of 2024. We'll also get into talking about some of the remaining free agents and where they could potentially end up. Because there's still some big names out there, somewhat big names, if you want to call it. But yeah, that's what we will get into when we come back from our final break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about some possible risky contracts for the 2024 season. So, let's get into that. So the first one, I guess, is Jerry Jeudy. So the Browns traded for him, and then they signed him to a 3-year extension, $52.5 million. When Jerry Jeudy was drafted by the Broncos, they were expecting big things out of him. A lot of people were expecting big things out of Jerry Jeudy, but he never really took that next step. And the Broncos moved off of him now. Now he's with Cleveland. And I think he's in a good situation, at least, with the receivers and the tight ends that he's surrounded by, and get a healthy Nick Chubb back. Really, the one thing I have a problem with is, the quarterback position, because Deshaun Watson just has not been great since, the Browns got him. So I like the supporting cast for Deshaun Watson. It's just Deshaun Watson's got to go out there and perform. But with Jerry Jeudy, he hasn't been great. So, and the Browns paid him a lot of money now. So, they're expecting big things out of him. And you know what? Maybe a change of scenery, he goes out there and he plays really well. But if he doesn't, then that's another bad contract for the Browns. He's never had a 1,000-yard season. The closest he got was 2022 with Russell Wilson, 972 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. That was his best statistical season. And had a career high 67 receptions. So I mean, we'll see. But that definitely is a risky contract. Saquon Barkley's contract that the Eagles gave him, that's also a risky contract. 3 years, $37.8 million. And that really just comes down to Barkley's health. I mean, he's getting older. I think he's going to have a good season with the Eagles, as much as, it does hurt as a Giant fan that he went to a division rival. But I'm not one of these Giant fans that, absolutely despises him now. No, I mean, I don't think Saquon went there because he's trying to stick it to the Giants. I mean, he went there because the Eagles gave him a good offer. He knows the area well. So, the only thing that stings is he went to the Eagles. So, I can't really hate him for that. But, the Eagles are taking a big risk because Barkley has an injury history. He's missed a lot of games over the course of his career. And, you're paying him a lot of money. The Giants were not willing to do that. I think the Giants were smart in not giving him that kind of contract. As much as I wanted him to stay, they made the right decision by letting him go. But you know what? If it pans out, the Eagles, they hit a home run with the signing. Because they really did not run the football as well as they had in 2022. They let go of Miles Sanders. And, then again, DeAndre Swift did have a good year for them. But, I don't know. It wasn't the same. They also did sign Rashad Penny last offseason. He was a non-factor on the Eagles. Which, I know Rashad Penny's another running back that has had injury problems, but he just had no impact whatsoever. Like, he was a healthy scratch. He just really, they just never used him. And I couldn't understand why, but that's what they decided to do. But, yeah, they bring in Barkley. And, you look at the Eagles' offense with Barkley, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. That is a really good offense. Now, they did lose Jason Kelce on the offensive line, which does hurt. But on paper, this Eagles offense, it's got the potential to be great. So we'll see what happens. The Calvin Ridley contract, 4 years, $92 million. Now, Calvin Ridley did have over 1,000 yards with Jacksonville. But, at times, yeah, it didn't look great. He was a little inconsistent at times, I guess we could say. But, it's, again, coming off of, basically missing almost 2 years of football. And, getting older. You're paying him a lot of money to come in, be that number one wide receiver with your young quarterback. Yeah, there's definitely some risk to that. Now, you're pairing him up with DeAndre Hopkins, who's getting older as well. If you had Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins in their primes, this would be a great receiving core. But, yeah, now that they're older, yeah, it doesn't have that same flair to it. Now, again, I think the receiving core, I think they could still produce. DeAndre Hopkins showed you he could still play, just maybe not to an elite level. But, I think they'll be fine. It's just they play in a very competitive division. Jacksonville, the Colts, and the Texans. And again, you play in a loaded conference. So, we'll see. But that is a risky deal. I think the biggest risk, at least from, this is, again, I got this from another article that I saw. I think this was on Bleacher Report. I think the biggest risk, or at least one of the biggest risks, is Kirk Cousins. 4 years, $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. I think it is the biggest risk. But it's a risk the Falcons were willing to take because they need a quarterback. Because he's 35 years old, 35, 36 years old. I think he's still 35. Coming off of a Achilles injury. You're giving him $100 million guaranteed. What if he just isn't the same quarterback? And now you're stuck with him. Again, I'm on the positive side with a lot of things. I think he'll be fine. But what if he's not? You just gave him that huge contract. You're investing all that money in him. And if he doesn't produce, that's really going to hurt. And it's a big year for the Falcons because, you play in a division that's very winnable. Right now, the Falcons are looked at as the favorites. And if Kirk Cousins isn't right, well, you're going to be back to square one again. And they went out and they signed Darnell Mooney and they traded for Rondale Moore. They added more weapons to this team. You got an up-and-coming defense. It's all right there for the Falcons to be a good team in 2024. And they finished 7-10 last year. With Kirk Cousins as their quarterback, they would have won the division. Now, again, I want the Buccaneers to win the division. But, I mean, right now you got to look at the Falcons as the favorites. I mean, the Bucs, last 2 games of the season, I mean, they lost to the Saints, and then they should have lost to the Panthers. And if they would have lost to the Panthers, the Saints would have been in. The Saints are dealing with a lot of stuff with their cap situation. The Buccaneers running it back. I mean, the Bucs can't afford to struggle during the middle of the season like they did, because they might not be able to catch up if the Falcons, they get off to a great start. But again, it all goes back to Kirk Cousins' health. And if Kirk Cousins is healthy, if he bounces back from this, then the Falcons will be fine. That was a freak injury that happened to him. And one of the things with Kirk Cousins is he's still one of those traditional pocket passers. He doesn't use his legs. Now, yeah, you're going to have to move around a little bit if, you're under pressure. But, he's not a Lamar Jackson. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not these guys that are going to run around. Kyler Murray. He's a pocket passer. So, we'll see what happens. But that is definitely a risk. There is some risk there, especially because, again, $100 million guaranteed. So, yeah. So these are all offensive risks here, but yeah, I think Kirk Cousins is a risk. Because again, that's a lot of money, and he's coming off of a significant injury. So, and some of the remaining free agents, and I've talked about them before. You still got Stephon Gilmore that's out there. Odell Beckham Jr. is still out there. Julian Blackmon, Justin Simmons, Ryan Tannehill, Tyler Boyd. All those guys are still out there. Jadeveon Clowney, he recently signed with the Carolina Panthers, so he's off the market now. There's some names here. Stephon Gilmore, 33 years old now. Not in his prime, but I think it'd still be a decent, number 2 corner for a team that's desperate. I shouldn't really say desperate, because I don't think you're getting a washed up Stephon Gilmore, but you're getting an older Stephon Gilmore. I think Odell Beckham Jr. will find a way on a team, but he's not the same Odell from the Giants. Right now he's like a number 3 wide receiver at best, I think. I guess he was like the number 2 with the Ravens, but you still see, oh man, I don't know what happened to my voice there, but you still see the talents there. It's just he's not the same Odell. So we'll see. Got a couple of safeties. Tannehill, I think he'll find a team. Especially if a quarterback ends up getting hurt. He could definitely be a guy that could come in and start for you. But I don't think you're gonna get, the Ryan Tannehill from 2019 with the Titans. But you could get a guy that could come in and still maybe win you some games. Tyler Boyd, I'm curious to see where he's gonna end up. And why he's still out there. Maybe he's holding out hope that the Bengals bring him back. Because again, if they trade T. Higgins, I'd probably be on the phone with Tyler Boyd saying, "Hey, come back. Let's try to work something out." Because if you lose T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, if you're the Bengals, yeah, listen, you still have Jamar Chase, but that's 2/3 of your receiving core gone. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think about the remaining free agents, the risky contracts. What's the biggest risk contract that was given out this offseason? Probably was Kirk Cousins. He, again, $100 million guaranteed. Yeah, so, yeah, that's pretty much it with the show for today. Like I said, hope everybody had a good weekend. Like I said, it was a big sports weekend. So make sure to tune in to all the other shows. later today to fill you in on all the March Madness stuff, baseball stuff, everything you could think of. We got you covered. So, I talked about the Yankees for like a second today, because that was a great weekend to be a Yankee fan. It's an exciting time. We get the Final Four later this week, national championship game the following week as well. Also, the women's tournament. We're going to get a rematch of the national championship game last year between LSU and Iowa. So I definitely want to, hopefully I'll be able to watch that, try to tune in for it. But yeah, there's a lot going on. So like I said, make sure to tune in to all the other shows. The GSMC Basketball Podcast, that'll be streaming in about an hour. So make sure to tune in for that. And then all the other shows after that. Get all your updates on the all things sports on both sports podcasts on the Sports Network, as well as making sure to tune into the GSMC Baseball Podcast for everything from opening day weekend. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for me for today. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.